This is the first part from the anime. The anime begins by showing a man named Rick undergoing such intense training that he thinks he might die. However, his seniors tell him that over the past 2 years, Rick has fought well, and thus he no longer needs to fear the rank promotion exam. It turned out, these seniors are the ones who have been training Rick. Nevertheless, Rick feels that he is still far from the strength of the seniors who have been training him. Sometime later, at an Adventurers Guild where registration for the Rank E promotion exam is taking place, participants are seen showing their guild membership cards and ultimately receiving their exam tickets, including Rick, who also registers himself. Unexpectedly, the receptionist girl recognizes Rick and reminds him that she is Alicia. Hearing this, Rick suddenly remembers Alicia and is surprised that she is transferred to the Adventurers Guild in that town. Alicia is also surprised to see Rick resign as a receptionist and, moreover, become an adventurer. It turned out, Rick realized that becoming an adventurer at the age of 30 seemed impossible because he should have registered for Rank E before turning 30 so that within 2 years, Rick could become a Rank E adventurer. Alicia then asks Rick what he has been doing for the past 2 years, where Rick replies that he secluded himself in the mountains and trained with his seniors. Not long after, a drunk male adventurer suddenly starts bothering Alicia. Seeing this, Rick immediately moves to stop the adventurer by holding the adventurer's stomach and asking him to calm down. At that moment, Alicia didn't seem too bothered and explained that as a receptionist, she often experienced such situations. Because of this, the other adventurers present start paying attention to them. At the same time, the adventurer who tried to bother Alicia suddenly faints, and Rick suspects that the man is too drunk. After that, Alicia handed Rick his exam card, where he received the exam number 4242. At first, Rick was happy, but then he realized that it was an unlucky number. As he left the guild building, a girl suddenly asked Rick if he had finished registering. This person was a maid named Rionette, and Rick explained that he had already registered. Meanwhile, the adventurers at the Adventurers Guild noticed handprints on the iron armor of the unconscious adventurer, who turned out to be Domold, a former Rank A adventurer currently wanted for assault. Alicia realized that this person was very dangerous and considered that Rick had saved her from the adventurer's action. Additionally, Alicia also suspected that the handprints on the armor were the work of Rick. The scene then shifted to Rick undergoing a health exam. However, the examiner was shocked because Rick was already 30 years old. The exam then continued with a magic strength test, where participants were instructed to place their hands on a crystal ball in order. By doing this, their magic strength could be measured by the intensity of the light emitted from the crystal ball. Shortly after, the exam participants began placing their hands on the crystal ball, which emitted light that the examiner could evaluate. When it was Rick's turn to check his magic strength, the light from the crystal ball was very dim, and Rick received an F- rating. Unfortunately, he became a subject of mockery for the other participants, who laughed at the 30-year-old Rick for having such a low magic strength. Additionally, they had never seen anyone with magic strength as low as Rick's. However, when the examiner was about to test the next participant, the crystal ball suddenly shattered. Not long after, the exam continued with a strength test, where they were instructed to punch a green punching bag so that the examiners could measure the participant's strength. It turned out, the punching bag could absorb strong attacks, and Rick immediately realized that it was made of slime because he had previously trained with a similar but gold-colored punching bag. In the past, his senior named Brufston had said that no matter how good an adventurer's weapon or magic was, strength was the most important thing, and it was a prerequisite for being an adventurer. Brufston then told Rick that if he could destroy the gold slime punching bag with his hands, he would be able to further develop his strength. However, Rick felt pessimistic about how he could possibly destroy such a punching bag with just his bare hands. But Brufston said that this was a fundamental lesson for adventurers. After that, Brufston immediately punched the punching bag, and it shattered instantly. At that moment, Brufston emphasized that he could destroy 200 such objects in one strike. Eventually, Rick began his training, where he had to hit the punching bag 50,000 times every day. Reflecting on his training period, Rick considered it the darkest time. Shortly after, the exam began, and participant number 4236 stepped forward. At that moment, the man immediately kicked the punching bag with his strength. Because of this, the examiner realized that the person could use enhancement magic. After that, participant number 4237, a young man named Freed, stepped forward. Arrogantly, Fried announced that it was time to showcase his extraordinary power, as he was the second son of the noble family Dyrmut. Additionally, despite being only 11 years old, rumors claimed that his strength was already at rank C level. Fried then quickly used his magical power and began chanting a spell to attack the punching bag, leading the examiner to consider Fried a genius. However, Rick was not sure whether what Fried used was third-level fire magic or rank C because it was too weak and small. Besides, the fire magic was different from his senior named Elissaret, who used fire magic with great strength and a terrifying effect. Still, Rick thought that maybe Fried was using a slightly different fire magic and possibly holding back his strength. Not long after, the exam continued with participants attacking the punching bag with full strength, but the bag could absorb everything. Finally, it was Rick's turn to step forward. At that moment, the examiner said he had heard that Rick had just started becoming an adventurer at the age of 30. The examiner added that one should train their magic power when young, and he thought Rick's strength was very poor. The examiner even advised Rick to quit being an adventurer starting now. Feeling annoyed, Rick recalled the punching bag training with Brufston he had endured. In the past, Rick had punched 20,000 times, and now there were only 30,000 more to hit the golden punching bag in front of him. Initially, Rick was pessimistic, but he continued his training. Returning to the present, Rick realized that he had indeed started very late. However, according to him, being an adventurer never considers age, and anyone can start something new at any age. Finally, Rick struck the green punching bag with his full strength. Unexpectedly, Rick managed to destroy the green slime punching bag, even breaking the wall behind it. This shocked all the adventurers who witnessed the event, especially Fried, who felt annoyed because he believed he should be the center of attention. Because of this, Fried planned to retaliate against Rick in the defense test since defense magic was his specialty. Shortly after, the defense test began, and Rick appeared very strong, resisting 4th level binding magic. Although this level of magic could not be resisted by other participants, Rick managed to withstand it effortlessly. The examiner praised Rick, who claimed he could use defense magic well. The examiner then asked Rick if he used 1st level magic to defend against his attack, and Rick confirmed it. Hearing this, the examiner intended to use an even higher level of magic, suggesting that Rick also use high-level defense magic. However, Rick admitted that he could only use 1st level defense magic. This revelation surprised everyone present because it meant Rick could manipulate magic with precision, but the examiner's attack would be stronger, and Rick's ability might not be enough. Rick then tried to explain to them that he would be fine. Feeling underestimated, the examiner immediately used his strongest magic and began chanting the spell. Unexpectedly, Rick managed to withstand the attack again, and the impact of the attack even attracted the attention of a first-class knight of the Kingdom of Philum. The knight, having heard the commotion, immediately came to the exam site. At that moment, the exam supervisor recounted what had happened, explaining that an F-rank adventurer had destroyed the green slime punching bag with his bare hand. Additionally, he could withstand 5th level binding magic with 1st level defense magic, and he was participant number 4242. The royal knight named Sylvester then realized it was Rick, but was surprised to see his age. In short, the participants, including Rick, began the written exam. Having worked as a receptionist for 14 years, Rick found the exam questions very easy to answer. In the afternoon, Rick felt happy because his first exam was over, and Rionette asked how his written exam went. Confidently, Rick said he was sure he got a perfect score since he had worked as a receptionist at the Adventurers Guild for a long time. However, Rick still wondered if he passed the first exam because his magic power was rated as F-. Rionette then reassured him that he had shown remarkable growth over the past 2 years. Unexpectedly, Rick was approached by Fried, where he remembered his name and called him a prodigy. At that moment, Fried introduced himself as a noble, but Rick thought Fried was lost and intended to help him find his parents. Because of this, Fried became angry and started crying, saying that the exam was supposed to be his debut to show his genius, but Rick had overshadowed him. Shortly after, a woman arrived and asked if Rick had made Fried cry. Apparently, this woman was Fried's older sister, Angelica, the eldest daughter of the Dyrmut family. At the same time, Fried accused Rick of being a 40-year-old man who had bothered him. Hearing this made Rick annoyed, as he was only 30 years old. While Angelica said that Rick's behavior was terrible because he still liked to tease young children. Eventually, Angelica removed her glove and challenged Rick to a duel. Unfortunately, Rick didn't understand the gesture and picked up Angelica's glove, afraid of making it dirty. However, Rionette explained that by picking up the glove, Rick had agreed to the duel, which, of course, surprised Rick. In short, the duel began, with the second-class knight from the Kingdom of Philum, Angelica, facing Rick. At that moment, Angelica wagered that the loser must serve the winner for the rest of their life. Hearing this, Rick became worried and asked Rionette about Angelica's background. Rionette then explained that Angelica was a second-class knight from the Kingdom of Philum, which meant she was equivalent to a Rank B adventurer. It turned out, Rank B adventurers are typically capable of killing high-level monsters on their own. Hearing Rionette's explanation, Rick was shocked and panicked, as he was just an amateur adventurer who had recently registered to become a professional adventurer. Rick then pondered how he could survive the duel. However, Rionette urged Rick to recall the brutal and intense training he had undergone for the past 2 years, which had traumatized him. Rionette also tried to calm Rick and encouraged him to be more confident. Additionally, Rionette reminded Rick that he was a proud member of the Orichalcum boxing group, the strongest on the continent. Eventually, Rick regained his confidence and thanked Rionette. During their duel, Angelica released her aura, and Rick realized that she was a swordsman who enhanced her body and weapon with magic. At that moment, Angelica arrogantly claimed that her speed was a deadly weapon, and she used a skill called Bling Step to attack Rick. Seeing this, Fried boastfully explained that Angelica was nicknamed the Lightspeed Knight. After showcasing her power, Angelica used Bling Step again. However, Rick felt that her attack was very slow and that it did not match her nickname, Lightspeed. In the end, Rick managed to dodge Angelica's attack, surprising her because Rick could read her movements, a feat only a few people with first-class magic could achieve. Because of this, Angelica remarked that Rick might have dodged once but wouldn't be able to do it again, and she attacked once more. However, Rick still considered Angelica's attack to be very slow and questioned if she was really a second-class knight. Rick even thought that Angelica might have become a knight through dishonest means and felt that he was stronger. Unexpectedly, Angelica stumbled and spun very quickly, causing Rick to panic at the sudden attack. Rick then wondered if he could dodge it, but he couldn't read Angelica's unexpected movements at all. Rick immediately realized his earlier arrogance in thinking he was quite strong. Now he recognized the vast difference in their strength and admitted that Angelica was indeed a second-class knight. Meanwhile, Angelica was surprised because she had stumbled in her enthusiasm. Moreover, she had managed to deceive Rick and told him that he was impressive for dodging her previous attack. Angelica then intended to attack Rick again, even faster than before, although the technique could only be used 3 times due to its side effects on her body. However, Rick once again managed to evade Angelica's attack. After that, Angelica planned to ram into him at high speed repeatedly and attack again, but Rick managed to dodge every time. When Angelica was about to use her technique for the last time, she stumbled again. Seeing Angelica's spinning attack at such high speed, Rick quickly decided to punch the ground, causing an explosion. Fortunately, Angelica managed to avoid it, as Rick's attack was so powerful that it shattered the ground around him. At that moment, Angelica was grateful for stumbling, which saved her from being hit by Rick's punch. Angelica then asked who Rick really was, and he explained that he was just a former receptionist who had only started as an F-rank adventurer 2 years ago. Unfortunately, Angelica thought Rick was lying to her. At the same time, Rick acknowledged that second-class knights were indeed impressive and decided to use the opportunity to learn and give his all in the duel. Strangely, Angelica decided to forfeit and grant victory to Rick. She also acknowledged Rick's strength because he could dodge her Bling Step. When Rick reminded her about the bet, where the loser must serve the winner for life, Angelica had already fled. This made Rick feel that she escaped faster than during their fight. Eventually, Rick wondered if he had truly won. Rionette confirmed this, especially since his opponent had already surrendered. Rionette also reminded Rick that the exam results would be announced soon, and Rick felt a bit pessimistic about whether he would pass or not. However, Rionette informed him that the members of the Orichalcum boxing group would come to meet him. Sometime later, Alicia gathered all the exam participants, including Rick. Alicia then distributed the exam cards to each participant and explained that if the card turned blue, it meant the participant had passed the first stage of the exam. Hearing this, Rick felt pessimistic again. However, Rionette encouraged him to be confident because if he failed, his seniors would triple his training regimen. This shocked Rick. Fortunately, Rick passed the first stage of the exam and was eligible to proceed to the second stage the next day. As he left the room, Rick noticed a very strong and strange smell. At the same time, a man named Raster appeared and started flirting with Rionette. Unexpectedly, Raster was the eldest son of the Diarmut family. Seeing this, Rick immediately protected Rionette by claiming he was her boyfriend. However, Raster insulted Rick as a lowly human. Furthermore, he noticed that Rick had just passed to become an F-rank adventurer. Raster revealed that he would be the examiner for the second stage of the test tomorrow. After that, Raster continued to flirt with Rionette and told her to leave the pathetic Rick. However, Rionette refused and claimed she had been in a relationship with Rick for a long time. Additionally, Rionette felt nauseous due to Raster's strong perfume, which made her uneasy, while Rick apologized for pretending to be Rionette's boyfriend. Despite this, Rionette was happy because Rick had helped her. In short, Raster was approached by Fried and Angelica. They were both crying and complained about what Rick had done to them during the first stage of the exam. Hearing this, Raster became furious and asked for the exam number of the participant who had troubled them. Fried then mentioned that the participant's exam number was associated with the number of deaths, revealing that the participant in question was Rick. On the other hand, Rick met the man who would be his examiner later, named Lynx. Unexpectedly, Lynx was impressed with Rick's enthusiasm for becoming an adventurer despite starting late in life. Apparently, Lynx himself had started his adventuring career at the age of 24 and had now reached rank A. Because of this, Lynx then encouraged Rick and shook hands with him. As Lynx left, he was confronted by Raster. The next day, the exam committee announced that the examiner supervising participants numbered 4,200 and above, including Rick, who was previously Lynx, had been replaced because he had suddenly fallen ill. Rick felt uneasy about this, but he quickly panicked upon learning that Raster was the replacement examiner for Lynx. Moreover, Rionette reminded Rick that Raster might be connected to Fried and Angelica, who were also members of the Diarmut family. Shortly after, Raster began examining the participants, appearing very brutal and cruel. At the same time, the leader of the Diarmut family elite troops met with Raster to take over Raster's plan to target Rick. While Rick was waiting his turn and looked very frightened because Raster was known to be very strong and cruel. Some novice adventurers even nicknamed Raster the F-rank Adventurer Career Destroyer. Fortunately, Rionette faithfully encouraged Rick and confidently told Rick that she always believed in his abilities and strength. Rionette also urged Rick to focus and prove himself in front of those who underestimated him. Moreover, there was no option for Rick to give up, as failure would mean his seniors would triple his training. After hearing all of Rionette's advice, Rick felt optimistic again and thanked her. Afterward, a mysterious figure appeared, claiming to be a fortune teller who would predict Rick's future. But when Rick sat in front of the fortune teller, he was suddenly teleported, and Rionette was also trapped in magic. Unexpectedly, the fortune teller was Fried, who had planned to disqualify Rick by sending him out of the examination arena. Realizing this, Rionette was furious and unleashed her powerful magic, capturing Fried. Meanwhile, Rick was surrounded by the elite troops of the Diarmut family, led by a man named Jorge who had previously met with Raster. At that moment, Jorge explained that their goal was to eliminate Rick to prevent Raster from being involved in a scandal. Hearing this, Rick panicked, as he was outnumbered and outranked. Fortunately, the Orichalcum boxing group arrived just in time. Initially, Rick claimed that the elite troops were his opponents for training before the exam. But Rick didn't tell the truth because he feared his seniors would brutally kill the elite troops. One of the elite troops members, named Baldy, denied Rick's words and attacked Brufston with his sword. Unexpectedly, his sword shattered, and Brufston wisely advised him. Baldy then tried to punch Brufston, but his hand was crushed by his grip. Fortunately, Brufston healed Baldy's hand and continued to advise him. Feeling disgusted, Jorge ordered his men to attack Brufston, but one of Rick's seniors, named Eldwarf, realized that Rick was being surrounded, not training. Eldwarf then took out his weapon and brutally attacked the elite troops. At the same time, one of the desperate elite troops members took Rick's most temperamental senior, Elissaret, hostage, causing her to unleash powerful magic without chanting. Seeing all this, Jorge finally realized that the three were the legendary S-rank adventurers, Brufston the wise orc, Eldwarf the genius weaponsmith, and Elisarette the little demon destroyer. On the other hand, Freed asked how long Rionette would hold him captive, where Rionette replied that it would be until Freed brought back Rick. Hearing this, Freed laughed and said that Rick would not return because he was already surrounded by his family's elite troops. But surprisingly, Rick managed to return without a single scratch. Seeing this, Rionette threw Freed hard and welcomed Rick. As Rick was about to start his exam, a wounded Lynx appeared and revealed that Raster had beaten and detained him. At that moment, Lynx also shared his dream of building a school for children who wanted to become adventurers. However, Raster had mocked and insulted Lynx and his dream while holding him hostage. Despite this, Lynx thought of Rick and managed to escape to find him, worried for Rick's safety. Realizing that Raster's actions had crossed the line, Rick became furious and promised Lynx that he would be fine. Rick also reaffirmed his life philosophy that anyone can do anything at any age, including Lynx starting his dream. On the other hand, Raster continued as the examiner, torturing the exam participants. Shortly after, one of the elite troops appeared and apologized for failing to eliminate Rick. However, Raster was pleased because he intended to instill terrifying fear in Rick through torture. At the same time, Rick was seen walking angrily towards the exam arena, determined to take revenge for what Raster had done to Lynx. This is the end from the first part of the anime. Moral lesson from the story: training in the mountains for 2 years might make you strong enough to punch a slime, but it won't help you dodge an angry knight with a grudge. Remember, age is just a number, unless you're 30 and trying to fight like a 20-year-old.